All right. So the fact that Audra started my recording means I believe it's about time for us to get going on this. So we have kind of people in varying areas in AP Insight. Um, Let me move on to the next slide here. I'm Jeremy Lynch. I'm from Durant High School in Plant City, Florida. I've been teaching AP Chemistry. My first year was 2007, so I think I'm in my 11th year. 2006, 2007 was my first one. So I think I'm in my 11th year. Um, I've been working on kind of AP Insight since its inception. Um, I was on the help develop challenge areas and building blocks. I was all part of that process, and then I kind of stayed on as kind of a consultant with this, and I do trainings like the one you are a participant in right now. Audra Ward is the director of AP Instructional Design. You see her up there as one of the hosts as well. She's the one who started the meeting recording for me. She's a life science person and an excellent go-to person. So this is what we have in the plans for today. We're going to do a brief recap of AP Insight. We're going to navigate to the planning tools on AP Insight so you see where those planning tools are. We have facilitator reflections, time management tips for AP Insight. I'll let you know kind of things that I do to kind of help me integrate it into my classroom. And then near the end, we'll have a chance for participant questions and open discussion. As we're going through, if you have any questions for me, please just type them into the text box at the right, and I will get to them as soon as possible, as soon as I see it, and as soon as I can fit it into the training. It was decided early on just to do like text questions. These meetings are being recorded for future playback for people who'd like to watch them. And so instead of having everybody talking all at once, we decided that this was kind of a more a clean, tidy way to go about it. So yeah, if you have any questions, just type them in the text box at the right, please. We'll go through related resources and next steps. And then at the end, there will be a survey. So if you'll stick around and do that survey for us at the end, that would be much appreciated. We are going to start off with the brief recap of AP Insight. So this is stuff that you would have gone over at your Welcome to AP Insight training if you did either the 90-minute course online or you might have done one of the AP Insight courses in person. So AP Insight, what is AP Insight? It provides focused support on challenge areas that are foundational to college level achievement, yet hard to teach and hard to learn. So all of these challenge areas that we're talking about were all decided by the research data that came from AP exams. What do students really struggle with? What is fundamental for everything in the course? So I always like to give the example, electrochemistry, for instance, is sometimes a challenge for many students. It typically is not considered one of those fundamental areas that is far-reaching to all of the rest of the course. It's more of kind of one of those offshoots and kind of an extension of everything we've learned. So it's not considered one of those foundational subjects. Therefore, it was not considered a challenge area. AP Insight uses formative assessments to identify students' misunderstandings during the instructional cycle so that targeted resources can be provided to help close those gaps. And you're going to see an example of those formative assessments as we go through here and where those are located. Here are the parts of the AP Insight. The prepare, teach, assess, and act. There's tabs for all these. If you did log in, you can probably go on and check those out, see those tabs and see what is in each of those. The prepare tab where you kind of plan your unit. the stuff you need for teaching, performance tasks, the assess tab that has the building block quizzes and the challenge area assessment, and then the act tab where you get the feedback for the teachers, the feedback for the students, and then the targeted resources that students might need for next steps. Get my little arrow here. All right. So this topic translation, this is a very important tool for teachers who are trying to plan out all of their AP Insight materials. Because AP Insight isn't aligned to any single textbook, what might be taught on an AP Insight topic might be located in different places in our different textbooks. I know I believe we have two people with Zumdal in here. I believe Lori and Maria both said they were on Zumdal. And then Christine and I here in Florida are on Brown LeMay. So the different textbooks have different ways of teaching this stuff. So the topic translation tells you what topics are located in what building blocks. So you can look at this and say, I teach these topics, these topics I teach in this chapter, and I will find those in building block A. And then these topics I teach in this chapter, so I'll find them in building block B. So again, there's actually times where you'll do in a challenge area that has multiple building blocks, like maybe it has four building blocks, A, B, C, and D. You might find two of the building blocks in one chapter, and then two of the building blocks in another chapter. So it's very important whenever you start out that you have all of this stuff planned out in your challenge area roadmap. Challenge area roadmap was something that you probably did during the Welcome to AP Insight training. So go back and look over the challenge roadmap. I believe there's even tutorials on building your challenge area roadmap. So if you have not done that yet, it might be a good idea to go back and take a look at that stuff. How do you get to the topic translation on AP Insight? So you can see up here there's a tab for strategies. And then when you open up strategies, you'll see these pop up, and under identify the challenge areas, all the way right there, you see the topic translation. So strategies, oh, I thought that was going to, oh, there it is. Topic translation down there, all right? So that's where you'll get that. If I go back, that's where you'll get this list where it lines up what your topics are with the building blocks and challenge areas. Are there any questions on any of this stuff yet? Is everybody good? All good. All right. All right. Thank you very much. So this unit planning calendar, which I was actually just looking more into the other day, is very nice. There's a sample unit planning calendar in AP Insight, and they have it set out for the kinetics chapter. This has the kinetics unit for 17 days. I can tell you that's a little bit longer than I run kinetics for. But as I was saying earlier, I also have to do a lot of people skip chapters 1 through 4. I don't get to do that because I have sophomores who haven't taken chemistry. So I think and I also have 2 periods each day, so I don't need to spend as many days on any given topic. But this is a sample unit planning calendar, and this is available on AP Insight. I'll show you where that is in a minute. It provides guidance for thinking about how will you teach and when you will assess for learning in a particular unit. Yeah, Maria agrees. Yeah, if you only have one semester, Maria, I can't imagine spending much more than a few days on anything. This is color-coded. Like you can see the red here are the building blocks. These are the quizzes. They put everything in red. These are all available on AP Insight. The black is not actually an AP Insight resource. This is stuff that teacher does in the class. Down here, the purple are performance tasks. These are also available in AP Insight. So they color coded theirs. In AP Insight, there's a blank one of these, and you can fill it out for any unit you want, and you can color code it any way you want. Yeah, Maria said this unit planning calendar will be very useful when she plans out the whole semester, and it is. It is very nice. The challenge area roadmap's really good for when you're planning out, and that's what I would start with. And then the unit calendar, whenever you're planning out an entire semester, if you plan out your entire semester all at one time, which is probably way more foresight than I have. I'd probably do unit by unit. Maybe after a couple years of doing it, I could get it all lined up and good to go for an entire semester. But yeah, you really do have to plan ahead if you want to make sure you hit all the big ideas, as Maria's saying there. So we're still in kinetics here, and this is days 6, 7, 8, 9, and 10. Notice this in the sample planning calendar, they left a day open for work and discussion time. There's another one of those quizzes. Review quiz, more of the non-AP Insight stuff here. I think this bleach and blue lab, the light green, the color coding is not keyed, but this is maybe from the AP lab book that College Board provides. So, and I think there's one more. Here's days 11 through 17. We have another performance test down here in purple. More of the building block assessments here. If you don't recall, if you haven't used them, the building block assessments are all multiple choice. They're all, I think every single one of them is 4 questions long. And then the challenge area assessment, after you hit all the building blocks, you're ready for a challenge area assessment. And it kind of encompasses all the building blocks that you've gone through. And this one is actually an FRQ, or a constructed response. And it is, it takes out all the building blocks from, in this case, kinetics, which unlike all the other ones, I think kinetics all are self-contained in the kinetics chapter. So you would do the 3 building blocks, A, B, and C, and then you would take that challenge area assessment, which is free response, near the end. Maria says that she's heard other chem teachers use that leave Fridays as discussion and FRQ practice as indicated by the sample calendar. Yeah, that one Friday they use, that's always good to kind of leave yourself available for having a day of just discussion and practice. I often will have kind of one of those practice days. It feels like in 1 hour, I feel like if I'm doing practice on a free response, I can only get through like a couple in 1 hour. So, like I said, I'm fortunate I have a little bit more time than that, and I'm able to do a little bit more practice than that. What's that, Lori? Finding time to be able to do that practice and discussion? Yeah. I'm sorry, Lori, how long have you been teaching AP Chemistry? This is your first year? Yeah, so it will be something that you'll struggle with at the beginning, and then you'll just kind of learn as you get more comfortable with the material, kind of figure out where all that stuff goes. And yeah, I agree with Marie on this. She says that's when they discover what they do not know. Yeah, they think they know everything until you give them a couple of free response questions. It's like, oh yeah, they have all these misconceptions they weren't aware about, you weren't aware about. Then you figure out there's a lot of learning that happens whenever you do that discussion and practice. The building block quizzes, again, if it's been a while since you've used them or you haven't used them, the building block quizzes, if they get them wrong, it is very nice because all the distractors, all the wrong answers do have reason behind them. And if a student picks a wrong answer, it does say why that it explains why the answer is wrong and what misconception they may have that led them to pick that answer, assuming they didn't just flat out guess the multiple choice answer, right? Assuming that they thought they had it right. It's really handy for students when they take that. Yeah, the instant feedback is an extremely, I think, powerful tool when using AP Insight. Yeah, exactly. Students know right then what's going on. I actually, well, we'll get to that later, so I won't get ahead of myself. So how do you access the unit planning calendar? Here you go. Right in the AP Insight. This is the front page right here, right when you log in. Right up here, where the arrows, double arrows are pointing, you click on Strategies. Then when you get in here, you'll see we already talked about where the topic translation is. Right there was the topic translation, right? It did not show you this earlier, but you scroll down a little further and you get to plan your units. And then you have the sample unit planning calendar, which, like I said, has kinetics on it. The one you just saw is the one that's the sample unit planning calendar on AP Insight Chemistry. And then right down here is a blank unit planning calendar that you can open up and fill in yourself. Or if that template doesn't meet your needs, then you can, of course, make your own unit planning calendar. Maybe you have something you use already and you love it. So, one of the nice thing about AP Insight, it gives you access to all these tools. There's so much on AP Insight, and but you don't have to use every single bit of it. If you don't like their unit planning calendar, use the one that you're already using. Um, you know, like one unit I think I teach very well, and the students have always been successful on that topic, and so I might not use as much of the resources in the challenge area as I might in another challenge area. So it just it's very moldable. It lets you do what you want, how you want to do it with AP Insight. It's very nice. Here's an example of the next steps guide. This is what the students would do. So after they take a building block quiz or the challenge area test, you would give them this next steps guide. And it's really important that the students, it gives the students a chance to reflect on what their misconceptions are. Um, let's see if I can blow this up. Yeah. So take a look at what's here in this box. This, I'll give you a second to read this. This is what students would be looking at. What did the student know about the concept or science practice assess? Did they misread the question? Do you need more time or practice with the content or science practice assess? So this gives a chance, the students a chance to really reflect on those incorrect answers. Specifically, they call out what the question was that they were doing, did they get it correct or no, and then what the reflection on that specific question was. Notice up here you see that they have a place to fill in what building block it was, what challenge area it was. It tells them what the purpose of the reflection is. So it is a tool for helping students reflect on the quiz questions they got wrong so they can reflect on their learning. But then, right here, we have another next steps guide, but instead of the student, this one's actually for the teacher to help the teacher improve. So again, it has a place for the building block and challenge area, but this is a tool for teachers to reflect on any instruction, how to close any gaps in understanding. So picking a part out here, I'll give you a second to look at this. Like right here, right off the bat here, identify the questions that most students miss, right? If most students are missing it, why are most students missing it? Is it because it's hard, or is it because maybe we did not teach it in the most effective manner, and there's room there for improvement on our side? Then it has down here, determine your action plan to close those learning gaps. Yeah, so Maria is asking if there's, apart from answering the questions online, should they also use another form to fill out the reflection? So these guides that we're looking at right now are on on AP Insight. So this is something you would pass out to them, and they would actually manually fill it in. So with pen and pencil. So this is not an online form. This is something that you would hand to them, and they would fill it in for the reflection. Good question, Maria. Thank you. Let me get that blown back up. Sorry. Yeah, this is one of those things. It's very important. I'm afraid it's one of those things when with limited time, it can often get put on the back burner. When you just got content, 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 you have to deliver, right? So these reflections are extremely important, but sometimes tough to do in class. So a suggestion here would be to hand them the paper and give this as a homework assignment. Have them reflect on something, give the building block quiz in class maybe, and then hand them this and have them do the reflection on what they missed. It says down here, if your class is, it gives you, determine your action plan. If a majority of your class needs support with one specific misunderstanding, plan to use the student resource for that misunderstanding under the recommended next steps with your whole class. You can also use a class act resource for the most common misunderstandings with your whole class. Then it says if your class is divided between two misunderstandings, plan to use the student resource or class act resource for those misunderstandings with the students in small groups. So you'd separate your students into groups and then you would use the specific resources. And then if your students are dispersed across multiple misunderstandings, plan to use the student resource for the various misunderstandings. So each, again, you would even further divvy them up and have them do those. All right, very important slide. So one of the most common things with whenever teachers are asked, often like in the Welcome to AP Insight, we ask them, how progress is going with AP Insight. One of the common things is because of time, it's hard to integrate. So one of the things about AP Insight, it is daunting. Again, there's so much material, and this is not intended to be added to everything you do. It's very flexible. So, well, and here it says that right here. So remember that AP Insight tools are flexible. You can use or not use whichever ones you need to in any order that works best for you. So as I was saying earlier, if I have a chapter that I'm already pleased with how I teach it, I'm already pleased with how the students perform in it, they do very well, then I might not even need to use any of the resources for that specific challenge area or building block. However, like I was looking at my AP data, and I had a pretty decent pass rate last year, but I found out my students did very poorly in atomic theory, and I had no idea. So even though I thought I was teaching it well, students just did not do well on it on the exam for whatever reason. And there is stuff in the AP Insight on atomic theory, and so using that, so I tried to use that more in my class this year to see if I can help close those gaps that I did not even realize were there until I looked at that data. So remember that you can use this as much as you need to in certain areas or as little as you need to in other areas. So it's not, College Board is not saying you need to use this properly, you need to implement every single thing in here, every performance task, every building block quiz, every challenge area test, every reflection. They're not saying you need it for this to be successful, you need to do that. The idea is you integrate it the best you can where you need it. Utilize the resources available. Here's a big thing, replace an existing activity with a performance task. Oh yeah, so Maria down here says, for me, it's the particle diagrams interpretation of graphs that my students struggle with. So if, I know I have Lori and Christina, you're both first year teachers, but since the AP rewrite a couple years ago, they have a huge shift in focus to particle diagrams. So drawing particle diagrams, interpreting particle diagrams is now a huge part of AP chemistry. So, and a big part of the exam often shows up on the FRQs and they have to sketch diagrams or whatever. So coming on to AP Insight where there are in those like challenge area quizzes, for example, where you get to see those, where they get exposure to those particle diagrams is a very, very invaluable resource. So take a look around for those if they seem to be struggling with particle diagrams. And then I use them in conjunction with my textbook with Brown LeMay and the questions in the back. And Christina has Brown LeMay as well, so she might realize this. But the first few questions, like the entire first section, are very conceptual, and a lot of those have particle diagrams and interpreting diagrams. So I always like to go through those now, especially since they put the emphasis, an added emphasis on those particle diagrams. Yeah, and then Maria said down here that the building blocks focus on those particle diagrams. Absolutely. Yeah, the I'd say anytime you have one of those particle diagrams, Lori, that you can assign, and I don't know how well Zumdahl does the particle diagrams, I say try to hit them the best you can, as many of them you can, as many of them as you can, the best you can, because having a good understanding of those particle diagrams will usually demonstrate a pretty strong conceptual understanding of that content. And, uh, College Board and the AP Chemistry exam has definitely put an added emphasis on the conceptual understanding over just the mathematical plug and chug sort of mentality that kind of used we used to kind of have back a decade ago when we were when question number 4 was always balancing and writing equations every year. So instead of trying to do rote memorization, they kind of really have leaned in, doubled down on this conceptual understanding of material. Ah, yes, yeah. Yeah, don't ask my students to solve for x if it's in the denominator of a fraction. It's over if that happens. Um, so on to the second topic here, the replace an existing activity with a performance task. So this is something if you do something in class to kind of um, maybe you do a little lab or a little activity or maybe a worksheet to kind of reinforce skills. Always check with AP Insight. If it's one of the challenge area places, check the performance task in the AP Insight because it's nice. They might give you other options. Sometimes they're little mini labs. Sometimes they're more like a worksheet type material. But the nice thing here is it's all in the College Board AP design. So it will probably align better with what they need to know for the exam at the end of the year. So I highly recommend taking a look at these performance tasks and look at replacing something that you may not be thrilled with already. Maybe replace it with one of these performance tasks. The performance tasks are student-centered and tied to a specific set of topics in a building block. Allows you to see the level of student understanding without having to design your own activity. And because they address the content you're already teaching, these resources can be used in lieu of other activities. And I've done this multiple times. I'm trying to think of which one, weak acid and bases I really like. There's I want to say it's a buffer one that I think is really good that I dumped my old buffer activity and just completely replaced it with the buffer performance task from AP Insight. Um, yeah, so Maria said an example is using the black box for the atomic structure big idea 1. It's just a short class activity to introduce the topic and it can be incorporated in the building block. So those performance tasks, I believe, let me see. I don't want to misdirect you here. I don't have the window pulled up, so let me grab it real quick. Mm-mm. if you go to challenge areas, click a big idea, and then, oops, I just pressed the wrong button. Challenge area, big idea, and you go to the teach tab is where those are at. Yeah, Maria beat me to it. Yeah. So I was trying. So there's multiple tabs. So there's at the top there's the strategies, challenge areas, assessments, and discussion tabs. So you click on the challenge area tabs, and then when you click on that, then you get the prepare, teach, assess, act tabs, and then you go to teach. And then if you scroll down, you'll see the student progress sheets, and then you can pick the building block, and you'll see the building block quizzes, and then you'll also see the performance tasks for the various building blocks. Yeah, no problem, and thank you for that, Maria. And then, of course, assign the building block quizzes online. This is a good time saver for you. You don't have to grade these. They can take them on phones or computers. Results are immediate. We already talked about that. So they see exactly why they got something right or wrong. And then it provides it feedback for the individual student responses so they can see if they got it wrong, why they got it wrong. This is this is something I prefer. I like to use them in class. So I usually assign building block quizzes right there in class and have them do them on their phones. They all have their phones. So that's usually not an issue. If a kid can't get connection or they don't have their phone or they used all their data or whatever, I typically don't take them for a grade and I just have them sit with somebody else and work in a pair with somebody else. But all teachers are different. You can do it however you want to. You can take it for a grade if you'd like. All right, so let's see. What do we have about what do we say here, Lori? Lori, what did you say you've been just the performance test is all you used so far? I am not sure if we can access it over this summer. Audra, are you in here? Can you answer on that one? Because I because I also consult, I do have access over the summer, so that's not an issue for me. As long as the subscription is paid, you can access over the summer. So is it typically like a 1 year from the date of the subscription, so it's not a school year subscription? Got it. All right, so you get the subscription for 1 year, and as long as it keeps up as long as they continue to update it, then you should be able to have access all year round. Thank you, Audra. And it is good, yeah. Like during the summer, you can like when we have time, it's really the best time to kind of go through everything and make sure that you're utilizing it all to the best of your ability, and getting the most out of it. And then assign next step guide as homework to help students reflect on their misunderstandings. The guide, along with assigning ACT resources from the quiz, can help win back time down the road. And we already talked a little bit about the next steps guide and the reflection there. Uh, can be a really big time saver and really big tool for making sure we fill those gaps. Yeah, Lori, and I think that's not uncommon for. I mean, you have so much on your plate being a first year AP chemistry teacher as it is. So I think it's the getting to those building block quizzes and the challenge area quizzes are, at a bare minimum, it's easy to do that, right? Go in there, it's like, oh, I have a building block quiz that matches up with what I need. So I think that's probably pretty common for someone using it for the first time. Um, like the other stuff, the performance tasks, you do kind of have to delve deeper into that stuff and kind of really look around. So yeah, I agree. And Maria said that's how she started. I think that's how I started. The very first thing I ever did was a building block quiz. Um, so yeah, and then I started with doing, after that it was the performance tasks, and then I just kind of, added on from there. So absolutely. So the building block quizzes we talked about a little bit. This is where you can find them. You can go to the assessments tab at the top. Instead of clicking on challenge areas, you can click on assessments and it brings you to the quiz tab or the quiz page. And then you can filter it out by big idea over here on the left side. And there you go. You can choose which one you want to assign. The other way you can get to it, just so you know, is you can actually, if you go to the challenge areas and click assessment, there's also access to the building block quizzes on there. So if you want to look it up by challenge area, you can do that as well. So there's a couple ways to get to these building block quizzes. So again, very handy to, I like to do them just in class, but you can assign them as homework. Kids can do them on their phones. They can do them on laptops, computers, whatever. So it pretty much works on any of the platforms that the students will have, as long as they have internet access somehow. Oh yeah. So your predecessor didn't give it the old college try, huh, Lori? Well, congratulations on inheriting that job. Are there any questions about getting to the building block quizzes? Are we good there? Yeah, Christina, the it's actually a lot easier than it used to be. Once you go on there, they once you sign up to it, it gives you a code to give the students, and they have to log in, they have to make an account or whatever. Then they just enter that code, and then they all just populate your roster. And then when you assign a quiz, it automatically goes to their login. They just click on the quiz you assigned, and boom, they're taking the quiz. It's really not. It used to be where they each individually had a code to put in, and it was kind of a bit of a pain. But yeah, College Board did a really good job at streamlining that. So kudos to them for doing that. It's super easy now. Whenever you go to, trying to think, whenever you just go to assign, I want to say it's like at the top of one of these pages. Let's see, Jeremy, are the questions meant to be answered in the same time frame as the actual exam, like 1 point? No, I'd actually say, Maria, that these questions are, in my experience, these are a little bit more verbose than the multiple choice questions on the exam. On the average. So it usually takes my students a bit longer to answer 4 questions on this than it would on the actual exam. However, that's not, that's not always the case. But on average, I would say they're a bit longer and more involved than the exam. They really kind of delve into the deep understanding. So, yeah, matter of fact, I usually think that it gives it kind of color codes. 4 is green because there's 4 questions each building block, and 4 is green, 3 right is yellow, and then 2 or 1 right is red. And I would actually be more inclined to say, I mean, better safe than sorry. The better, um, the more the merrier. But typically, I'm pretty happy if my students are getting 3 on it. So I would say 3 and 4, I would put in the green, 2 in the yellow, and then 1 or 0 in the red. But that's just more my experience. Students who get, um, I would say my really good students, my 4s and 5s, are the students who are getting 3 or 4. Um, my 3 students will get 2, and that varies somewhat, but it's a kind of a good indicator. Yeah, 3 students, twos and 3 out of 4, and then my 4 and 5s will get 3 or 4. All right. Yeah, yeah, but if like I said, if the red is in the if they get 2 out of 4, and I mean that is red, but I'm not severely disappointed with the 2 out of 4. I'm okay with that. Like I said, the building block questions are definitely AP level stuff. They are difficult, and if my kids are getting a 50% on the multiple choice on the actual exam, I'm okay with that. But it is very nice to yeah, get a good idea. As Maria said, in a single glance, you can see with the red, yellow, green, it gives you a good indicator of where your students lie overall. Maria said she assigns the performance task as homework, then we discuss in class, and yeah, that's always a good option. It will depend on the performance task. I do know some of the performance tasks are actually like activities, like little mini labs and such, where they would have to do them in class. Yeah, I'm actually like Maria. I love doing group work with performance task sort of stuff, like worksheets. I've always been like big into letting students at least work in pairs, depending on how many students I have in the class, whether they do pairs or bigger. Um, but yeah, they do lend themselves well to having students work together. You have 6 students. You can have them do it as a whole class then, Lori. I imagine actually probably with just 6 students, you probably do a lot of stuff like just all together as a single group, don't you? Yeah. I've had smaller classes that were kind of like that. It was almost like I've never had just 6, but I've had as few as like 14 or 15, I think. And it takes on a bit more of a like family atmosphere when you have that few of kids. So it's kind of nice. It definitely has its advantages and disadvantages whenever you have groups that small. Yeah, we will be graduating about 500 this year. So that school, your school, Lori, is about the size of the school that I graduated from. So yeah, that's definitely the problem. Having a hard time getting the discussion going with so few students. You kind of need to really encourage them. A lot of times they might be a little shy about speaking up. They're afraid of being wrong. But yeah, I agree. On this guiding question, it says, for those of you who have used APN site resources, what other time management tips would you recommend? I think Lori and Christina are both in their first year. Maria, it sounds like you used it a decent amount, but you've kind of been giving tips as you go along. But if any of you have anything else you would like to add as far as the tips for time management, this would be a great time to say so. But we've talked about a lot of them. Putting them in groups, doing some of them as homework, doing of them replacing stuff that you're already doing with this instead of adding things. Don't add things, replace things that you think you might be able to get. Like I said, replace a worksheet with a performance test, stuff like that. And while Maria is typing there, I will move on to the next one. Yeah, so actually, it's funny that Maria says this insight will be very valuable as students review on their own for the test. So I actually had a student who took it as a sophomore and got a 3. He was a pretty good student, but it was like his first AP class he ever took, and but he got a 3 on it, and he was determined to do better. And so he got a junior year. He studied for his on his own. He didn't take the class again. He just took the exam, and he actually got a 4 on it. And then he still wanted to get the 5. So his senior year, he took it again, and I actually gave him. I had AP Insight for his senior year. Again, I didn't have him in class, but he was in my science club, so I talked to him all the time. And I actually just gave him an account for AP Insight, and he was able to go through all of the AP. He was, you know, a very hard worker, good kid, and he went through all the AP Insight building block quizzes just to review and study, and he ended up getting his five. I couldn't believe it. Like he started with his three, and like on the four and five was all self-studying, just hard work and determination, and he was able to get his five. Very proud of him. But I think the AP Insight, going over and reviewing for the exam on his own, was very, very valuable to him. So yeah, like I said, I'm really lucky with my 100-minute period. So I can I have a I'm a bit, I don't know, I don't even know the word for it. It's hard for me to understand being able to like having to teach it in a semester or in half the time, or like if you're only having for 60 minutes for half my time, that's like a quarter of the time I have. I couldn't fathom it. But that sounds very tough. Yeah, it's amazing, Lori. You say that like it's amazing like how students and honors kids who you know, struggle with a certain topic in honors, and they'll come back and take it AP year, and you know, I teach it again. We review all the stuff they did in honors, but um, they'll be like, I don't understand why I had a hard time with this in honors. They'll just come back and just because either the extra maturity from a few months, or just being better science students overall, they just have a better understanding on how to learn the material. So it's interesting if sometimes you just let it breathe, let it settle in. Sometimes they can just improve from that. Um, if students that are at different levels, how can I use AP Insight resources to differentiate for their needs in my unit plan? See tips on page one, on the next step guide. But if a majority of your class needs support with one specific misunderstanding, plan to use the student resource. I did already talk about that. I read that from the other next steps guide. Um, yeah, we went through all of these already, just dividing them up into small groups to do multiple misunderstandings. So if the group is divided, if your class is divided on what their misunderstanding is, you can actually divide them into groups and focus on the different next steps. Um, so the webinar series, if you go to strategies, you'll see this is only one. This is a three-part webinar. You are in this one right here, webinar session 3. I think if you go to webinar session 2, you will hear my voice again. I believe I was the host of this one. They might have done it again and their voice might have been much better, and they might be using them instead. I'm not sure, but but yeah, I think I'm the one for 3 and 2. And then there was also addressing student struggles, which was not me, but these three are available as recordings under strategies, and you can listen to them at your leisure if you'd like. Remember, you can always go to the Share What Works tabs if you have any questions. There's other people. It's just basically a discussion board, and you can post a topic, a thread, and other people on there can answer questions, or you can give suggestions or whatever you want to talk about AP Insight is awesome. There's sample roadmaps on there, questions about roadmaps. There's a Kansas roadmap, which might be different than the rest of our roadmaps. That might be a single thing. I don't know. Um, so yeah, if you have any questions at all for other people that are using AP Insight, go to the Share What Works. You can see up here, did you forget to ask a question? Do you want to hear about other AP Insight teachers' experiences? Do you want to share your experiences? This is where you would do it. Share What Works. One second here. I'm trying to, one second, I'm just looking at the AP Insight real quick. So now the Share What Works, just so you know, if you go to the tab, it is under discussions is how you get to Share What Works. So I just want to make sure that we knew how to get there. So the tabs at the very top at the home page, you see strategies, challenge areas, assessments, and discussion. If you click on discussion, that opens up what you see here, the share what works. So here is contact information. So if you want to email AP Insight, typically they are awesome about getting back to you. I had issues once because I had an account from my class, but I also had a College Board account for demoing. And so I had two different accounts and it caused issues. And I emailed them, and I probably within 20 minutes I had gone back 5, 6 different emails and my problem was fixed. It was they were extremely useful, supportive. They were great. Office hours Mondays 4 to 5. CAP Insight website for details. And then of course stay tuned for information about the next PLC. Um, I don't know if there is another one coming. Audra might be able to answer this. I don't know if there's another one coming in January or if this is actually the January one. So we ask if you don't mind before you leave to just take this quick survey. It is, I think this is a clickable link. It's like the same color blue, so it's a little hard to see right here. But you can click that, and if you can, yeah, thank you, Audra. This is the January one, so. But just keep an eye on the website, and you'll get information about any more upcoming PLCs. So, oh, here it is. Sorry, yes, there is a web links box that has the PLC survey. So I did not notice that. Thank you, Audra. Please include your full name, school, and school district in the survey. And this information will be CEU credit and attendance reporting. So, my pleasure, Audra. Thank you. Um, and then I'll be here for, it says the next 5 minutes, but if you need me longer, I don't mind staying longer. So if there are any other questions or concerns after you do your survey, I will be here for them. And if not, once you finish that survey, you are good to go. Thank you all so much for attending the training. Really appreciate it. So I don't know. When I clicked on it, it didn't open up a window, um, Maria. So where down at the bottom where it says browse to, I was able to just copy and paste that web address right there into another window, and it worked fine. So yeah, if it doesn't automatically open up the link. No problem, Maria. Thank you. And again, Lori, thank you for attending. And Christina, we talked about this the other day. I hope this kind of helped you get caught up on and reminded about how AP Insight worked. No problem. And of course, Christina, if you have any questions, you can always email me. Thank you. Audra put a clickable link in over here in the chat bar, if anybody was still waiting on that. Christina, are you talking about the one to get your class going? If that's it, I'll take a look at it and I will email you tomorrow. Yeah, no problem, Christina. It's been a while. I did it at the beginning of the year, so I just have to look at it again just to find it. I might be able to go on here. All right. So what you do, I just looked it up, Christina. If are you still in here, Christina? Yeah. So if you go to assessments, and then there's actually a tab that says manage classes, and you just create your class, and then you click on it, and it says right there, it says first time student access, and it gives a web address for them to go to, and it gives them a join code, and they just type in that join code, and they will be automatically populated onto your roster. So you're under manage classes. Hey, there we go. No problem. Now you're good to go. They'll be taking building block quizzes in no time. You as well, Christina. Good luck. Yeah, that is important that they go to the that student login and not like the AP Insight website. Yeah, I had students that make that same mistake, Maria. Thank you. Thank you, Maria. Appreciate all your insight. No pun intended. Thank you, Maria. Thank you, Audra.